Okay, hello everyone. Today we're getting together again for our monthly training. Happy to have everyone here. We're going to talk about how to get the most out of your dietary supplements. And we get asked about this a lot. It's an everyday question, pretty much. How should I take my supplements to get the most out of them? So we thought we'd just do a talk about that today. The few basic principles we'll go over first with how to get the most out of your supplements is simply one, uh, keep in mind that 100% absorption is not the goal. That would be dangerous, to be honest. Many nutrients are toxic if they're 100% absorbed. In fact, there's a disease called hemochromatosis where people do absorb 100% of the iron they take, and they can die from that very easily, not even taking supplements, just with the normal amount of iron they get in a typical diet. So they have to really limit their iron intake. Uh, Other minerals, calcium, if you absorbed 100% of the calcium you get, you'd probably be in a lot of trouble. So these are not, you don't want 100% absorption. And when you see people saying this is 100% absorbed, uh, first of all, it's not true. Second of all, if it were true, you'd want to avoid it like the plague. You wouldn't want that supplement. Um, in general, though, you are wanting to have it very well absorbed. And that's relative depending on what the nutrient is. For calcium, 23, 24, 25% is really great. For some things, it's more, and some things, it's less. In general, it's better to take small doses at a time because you get a higher percentage of absorption when you're taking smaller amounts at one time. So if you spread the doses out during the day, you'll get better absorption that way. Always use high quality supplements. Supplements made with poor quality ingredients, or even well made supplements with or well manufactured ingredients that are poorly manufactured as supplements, will never get really good results. I used to hear a term a long time ago. Computer programmers would say garbage in, garbage out. And I haven't heard the term much lately, but it's certainly true for that, for computers as well as for nutrients. If you don't put good ingredients in, you don't get good results. It's just that simple. However, we want to be sure we do get the best results possible. And so, assuming we do have good supplements, what do we need to do to maximize our investment in supplements? We have a lot of supplements. This is just a few of them. But people spend a lot of money on supplements, no doubt about it. And if you're going to invest a lot of money in your supplements, you want to make sure you get the best you can from them. Uh, so you want to make sure that you don't do things that decrease the absorption of your supplements. You want the best absorption possible in most cases. Uh, why throw away money when you can prevent it? Now, some supplements never even enter the body, in a sense. That may sound kind of strange, but let's talk about the digestive system for a minute. You can think of it as a hollow tube that goes through your body. It starts with your mouth, goes down to your esophagus, which you can see the top of it up here on the diagram, goes through your stomach. Your stomach empties into the small intestine, which goes around a whole bunch of circles and curlicues there, and then goes into the large intestine here, the colon, and empties out the anus. But that's really is a continuous solid tube that goes all the way through from your mouth to the exit, the anus there. You can see other things associated with that tube, including the liver, which is important for digestive enzymes, gallbladder there, little green thing that can help with digesting fats, the pancreas that makes enzymes, all part of this digestive system. designed to make sure you can absorb your nutrients and that you don't absorb things you don't want. The epithelial cell wall of the uh, intestinal tract is designed in a way to let things be absorbed into the rest of the body, into the bloodstream, and to be circulated through the body. So it's made to allow that, but it's also a barrier to keep bad things out. In fact, the uh, digestive system uh, is really part of the innate immune system in that it screens out a lot of bad stuff. The stomach acid can kill off bad bacteria or good ones for that matter. Uh, it all forms a barrier to keep things from getting that shouldn't from getting across the uh, cell walls into the bloodstream. So it protects your body from bad things getting into the body. And a lot of things that you eat never will go into the body. It'll just go straight through sometimes. Now let's talk a little bit more specifically about the absorption of different nutrients and what you can do to maximize your benefit from them. First of all, water soluble vitamins. The water soluble vitamins are the B vitamins and vitamin C. These are ones that if you put them in a glass of water and stir it up, they'll go into solution. Um, some of them more easily than others, some are more soluble than others, but in general, the B vitamins and C are water soluble. In food, these are usually part of complexes that have to be digested and broken down to permit absorption. Uh, but you know, when you're taking them as supplements, they don't have to be broken down. So as a supplement, it's already sort of partly pre-digested when you take it. Water soluble vitamins are absorbed by one of two methods, either active transport across the intestinal wall or by what we call passive diffusion. The active transport really grabs these vitamins, pull them across the cell wall and into the bloodstream uh, very efficiently for small amounts. But that's a system that's overwhelmed by too much. So it can't bring in a whole lot of these vitamins. So you also have the passive diffusion that allows some of them just to get through without that active transport. When the active transport reaches its capacity, a limited amount of the higher dose water soluble vitamins can be absorbed. But if you wanted 100%, you take, say, 10 milligrams of vitamin C, you'll absorb that amount almost 100%. But if you take a 500 milligram capsule, you're going to get much less of it. You'll get the same amount by the active absorption that you would with the smaller amount, or maybe even a little bit more. But then the rest of it has to come across with that passive diffusion, and that's pretty limited in the percentage that you can get that way. So you can force more through by passive diffusion by just putting more in there. And the more you have, the more you will get absorbed by passive diffusion, but the percentage of it will still keep declining. Water soluble vitamins, because they are already pre-digested, are best absorbed on an empty stomach because that way they don't have to compete for absorption with other things. These go directly into the portal vein, and from the portal vein they go to the liver, which the liver kind of screens all the stuff that's coming in from the digestive system, make sure it's not dangerous or anything. The liver is really good at that, and that's a measure of protection that it gives. A lot of times people will absorb things they shouldn't. But the liver hopefully can handle it. We also have fat soluble vitamins. They're a whole different ballgame when it comes to absorption. Now, the fat soluble vitamins are vitamins A, D, E, and K. These are There are also fat soluble nutrients such as fish oils, coenzyme Q10, alpha lipoic acid, and more that are absorbed just like the fat soluble vitamins and the oils that you get in your diet. The fat soluble nutrients are a little bit more difficult because they don't easily absorb into the cell wall because they don't mix there. It's a water layer there on the surface, and that water layer prevents them from being absorbed. So what the body does when you eat fats, it releases bile from the gallbladder and some other things too that causes the emulsification of these oils. And then they form these little tiny micelles. And that's shown over here on the left. You'll see what happens is oil molecule has hydrophilic, meaning it's water soluble, loves water on one end, and then you have a kind of a tail that's a uh, fatty acid uh, chain there that is water hating. So it arranges it so that the oils are inside of this ball with the water loving part on the outside. And then also in there will be your fat soluble nutrients like your vitamin A, your vitamin E, your vitamin K, coenzyme Q10. It'll get inside of this fat soluble area too. But the whole sphere on the outside is water soluble. So it can then go and up next to the cell wall in the intestinal tract. And then when it does that, it kind of comes up against it and it opens up and allows the contents to go inside of the cell. Now from there, the cells take it on, repackage it, and put it actually into the lymphatic system, not the portal vein. So it goes into the lymphatic system. This is kind of an important thing from several points of view. The lymph system doesn't directly um, take things to the liver like the portal vein did. And a lot of times, if you get bad things in there, the fat soluble ones are a little more dangerous because they can reach parts of the body and affect it without going through the liver, which can really detoxify a lot of things. So, a lot of times, your fat soluble chemicals, for that reason, are more dangerous because they can be absorbed more easily and bypass the liver. Now, fat soluble nutrients should be eaten with foods. And it may be obvious to you right now, and it may not be. The reason it should be eaten with foods is because foods contain oils. They also stimulate the release of bile from the gallbladder. And without all that happening, these micelles you see here, they're not formed. So you can't absorb your vitamin A, your vitamin E, your vitamin D uh, if you can't form these micelles. So really, if you take these vitamins A, D, E, and K, you may be able to absorb a little bit of it, but you're not going to get very good absorption. And you're really not getting your money's worth out of your supplements in that case. Now, an interesting case in point is people who have had gallbladder surgery because the gallbladder is not there. It can't dump a whole bunch of bile into the stomach. It can't do its job. But what happens with those people is that the bile duct is still connected and it's still releasing bile directly into uh, the stomach there. So you're still getting bile, but just a little bit at a time. So if you think about it, somebody who's had gallbladder surgery and had their gallbladder removed, they can get some um, absorption of these fat soluble nutrients, but not as much at one time. So it's really a good idea to still take your fat soluble vitamins with a small meal, but you probably eat smaller meals more frequently and divide your supplements up between those meals more. It's a little bit more difficult if you had that gallbladder surgery, but you can do pretty well. It's just a little bit different way of attacking it. Well, let's go on to mineral absorptions. Minerals are normally absorbed by active transport or active diffusion, just like your water-soluble vitamins. They have different mechanisms of absorption, but it's still an active transport or passive diffusion. Calcium, for instance, is actively absorbed by way of a vitamin D regulated calcium channel into those intestinal cells. Those cells export it into the body by a sodium exchange process. Calcium is best taken with food, as are most minerals, because the stomach acid, first of all, can break it down. Say, calcium is never, when you eat it, just calcium ion, very rarely. So if you're, say, taking calcium citrate or whatever, it's best absorbed as a free ion. So your stomach acid will usually break that into calcium plus citrate or something like that, or the process in the intestinal tract. Also, the presence of carbohydrate seems to improve calcium absorption quite a bit. And we're not quite sure why, but it may have to do with the sodium transport that we were talking about. But when taken on an empty stomach, minerals will be absorbed, but not as much as if you take them with meals. So keep that in mind. It's really better to take them with meals. Some minerals, particularly zinc and copper, are better if they're not taken together. They actually compete with each other for absorption. And there's some concern, and there's been a few cases that's known where people have been taking really high zinc during this pandemic, probably more than they need to, in order to kind of improve their immune system to try to avoid becoming infected with the COVID virus. However, taking large doses of zinc might put you at risk for copper deficiency. Usually you don't worry too much about copper, but if you're taking high doses of zinc, you might need to worry about it. So just to make that note. Well, now we'll go on to protein and amino acid absorption. Proteins, somehow reason I have a hard time explaining this to people sometimes, so they understand it. And this, I hope, will help you understand it. Proteins are basically long chains of the 20 different kinds of amino acids that your DNA code for. That's what DNA does, is tell your body how to make different kinds of proteins. Now, I have this diagram down here. It says protein, and it's got these look like dice there with P, R, O. Well, think of that as an amino acid. Each one is a separate one. You could say P is proline, R is arginine, O is, say, ornithine, T, tryptophan, whatever. Okay, so they're all bumped up against each other. Actually, if they're a protein, they're connected to each other, hooked together in these long chains. So when you're talking about amino acids, you're talking about just one of these parts of that protein chain by itself, not in a protein. But when you talk about proteins, you're talking about long chains of these things. This one would be 1, 2, 3, 6 of them. Okay, you think of that as a peptide, usually is what you would call that, not a protein. Peptides are just short proteins. But at any rate, peptides and proteins generally can't be absorbed. There's a few peptides that can. There appear to be a few proteins that can actually be absorbed. And that goes into some weird things that happens in the gut. Um, but it appears that a few proteins can be absorbed by special mechanisms. However, usually you have to break these chains into smaller chains of 2 to 3 amino acids, and uh, mostly one amino acid actually is ideal for absorption. It's better to take proteins with meals so that the digestive process can take this to completion. Because if you say drink a proteins drink, if it goes through too quick, your body's not going to be able to uh, digest it quick enough. Perhaps taking it with food will kind of slow down that process in the body. Um, you need to be able to digest the protein in order to get the full benefit from it. Because the amino acids are really what you're looking for. Your body will take those and make proteins in the body. Uh, However, if you're taking individual amino acids, they're better taken on an empty stomach. Say you're wanting to take arginine, which is kind of popular for a lot of people to take. You'd be better off taking that on an empty stomach without other proteins, actually, and other amino acids, because they compete with each other. A lot of times, two, three, four amino acids will use the same transport system. And so you might, if you put a whole lot of arginine in there with something else that it has to compete with, you may not get the full absorption of it. So uh, amino acids are already sort of pre-digested, so you don't have to worry about that, and will probably be absorbed a little bit better on an empty stomach. However, it may not make a huge difference, but it could make some difference. Some of the other things that we take as supplements, bioflavonoid absorption. Less is known about these, but there are over 5,000 known bioflavonoids that occur in nature, and many of them, if not most of them, have biological activities. Most, I think, with 5,000, it's hard to say this for sure, but most of them seem to be water soluble. We have quercetin here. It is water soluble. And largely, if you look at all these OHs in red around there, that's what really makes it water soluble. So that's a pretty water soluble, and it's best absorbed on an empty stomach. However, the absorption of most flavonoids are not well understood, and it's uncertain if there is much difference in absorption with or without foods being present. So, it's something that I would say generally I would take bioflavonoids on an empty stomach or with foods. I probably wouldn't worry about it too much. If I were really wanting to maximize it, I'd probably take most of them on an empty stomach, though. Dietary fiber is kind of like a protein in a way. It's a long chain of sugars, though, not amino acids. Uh, Dietary fiber are undigested polymers of sugar molecules. So this is one that you remember we said the body could be the intestinal tract could be like a hollow tube that goes through, and physiologists do think of the uh, food in the stomach, for instance, being on the outside of the body in a way because it hasn't crossed over into the rest of the body. That's still in that hollow tube that goes through. Fiber never leaves that hollow tube for the most part. It's not absorbed, and you wouldn't want it to be. The reason you take it is so it won't be absorbed. You want it to go down to the colon, where it is digested to some extent by to a big extent actually, depending on the particular type of fiber, by the gut bacteria. Uh, However, it can bind to other nutrients and prevent their absorption. So it might be preferable not to take fiber and other supplements together, for instance. What you do need to do with fiber, however, if you're taking a fiber supplement, is to make sure you take plenty of water with it to keep it solubilized. If the dietary fiber uh, can really dry you out inside and be constipating if you don't do that. So you want to keep plenty of fluid with it. be well hydrated. Finally, probiotics. Uh, these are live bacteria. There again, you really don't want. Uh, you, you're not trying to absorb them. You want them to go straight through and take up residence in your large intestine. The trick here is to keep them from being digested. Probiotic live bacteria should be taken on an empty stomach with water or juice because you want them to pass through your stomach as quickly as possible. If you put them in there with food, that's going to slow the transit time down, and they're going to spend more time exposed to stomach acids. And remember at first we were talking about the digestive system being part of the innate immune system, and that it has mechanisms to keep bad things out. Um, Usually, the body wants to keep bacteria from getting very far in the body. It wants to kill them and let them be excreted. So that's not what we want to be happening, however, to probiotic bacteria. Now, as best I know, there's no reason right now to think that the body can distinguish between good bacteria and bad bacteria. Uh, this is the innate immune system that's at work in the gut. The innate immune system doesn't recognize different kinds of bacteria or things. It looks at anything that is sort of coming in that it's not used to. And in fact, most of this innate immune system, like an acid wash in the stomach, really is very nonspecific. So the gut doesn't have time to initiate a specific immune response like antibodies or something like that, because that takes about a week. So this innate immune system is pretty good at getting rid of bacteria. However, you're trying to get them through there. So you want them to get through as quickly as possible. Remember, you've got that acid in the stomach. So we have what we call a DR capsule, so delayed release, that won't release in an acidic environment. So it gets past the stomach, that part of it at least, before it releases into the small intestine. That protects those bacteria and helps them survive longer. So, you also want to just be sure, take it with an empty stomach, not with food. Take it with water or a little bit of juice. Juice will actually provide a little bit of food for a lot of them. And you'll get your very best, using a good quality capsule product with the delayed release capsule. So that's the ideal. Well, let's just sum up the whole talk here really quickly. Getting the most from your supplements in a nutshell. Uh, Take with meals minerals, fat soluble vitamins, multivitamins. In general, I would say you'll have some of both there, but I would take them with a meal. Protein supplements, herbal supplements, they often need to be digested to get the bioactive components out. Certainly, your fat soluble oils and nutrients, coenzyme Q10, these kind of things, you really want to take with meals. Take on an empty stomach fat water soluble vitamins, free amino acids, something like melatonin, bioflavonoids, and definitely probiotics. For a lot of people, they're going to complain that this is too complicated. Well, okay. If I had to make a choice, I was going to take all of my supplements at one time, for instance, which probably not a good idea. I would take them with a meal. That is the way your body normally gets nutrients. I would really encourage you, though, if you're taking probiotics, make at least an exception for the probiotics and take them on an empty stomach because, I'm afraid you're just not going to get much out of them, and maybe you shouldn't even bother with them if you take them with meals. That's my personal opinion. Uh, some people may disagree, but I really think these probiotics have a hard time getting through to the colon and staying alive. So you want to give them every advantage that you can. And I hope that's helpful. We're going to have a little brochure printed up. We're working on it right now. And I'm waiting if people have responses that they think I should have covered something else or added to it. Be certainly interested in hearing about it because we want to make sure we have in this brochure that we can hand out to people all the information they need to help them get the most out of their supplements. And that's what this is really about. It's not a talk today to sell you supplements. It's a talk to help you get the most out of the ones that we do sell to you and that you buy from other people. This talk will apply to all the supplements out there, really. So thank you very much. I enjoyed talking about this. I think it's important. And we'll be back next month for another topic. And have a wonderful spring. Thank you very much.